Welcome to another episode of the GYST, when life, love, and the pursuit of happiness gets out of control. Sometimes you just need a moment to get your shit together, and so do we. That's why we're here. I'm your host, Kay Bellamy, and I got my co hosts, Val and Steph, here. And tonight's show, oh my God, is going to be, I feel it in my bones, going to be off the chain. Why? Because it is all about the exes. So if you are watching or if you are listening, I have a question. Could your ex be your next? With all the dating woes on the rise, do you think it's a good idea to dig back in those crates and pull out, the old mate, the old dude, the one you had before? Is that a good idea? When you think about your exes, when you think about your past relationships, who would you dig in the crates for and go back and get them and bring them from the old school to the new school? Who? Is there any? Is there any ex that you would literally go back today and say, you know what? I really want to be in a relationship with you again. So the question to all of those watching is, could your ex be your next?
Okay, so our turn. So for all my family watching, the answer is no, because I'm married. However,
Right.
I just needed to put that out there. My disclaimer first. So the answer to the question for me is no. However, when I really thought about this topic and I thought about, maybe the few people that I've dated, and most relationships ended for a reason, I can honestly say I can think of one that ended not because there was anything wrong with him, not because he did anything. It was probably more me, because I was recently out of a relationship when I happened to meet this guy, and he really was a great guy. But then it just didn't really work out because I still had the one that I just broke up with, but they're still calling you for a little while. So it just all got in the way. So it was just hard to pursue it. But I would say of all the people I ever dated, I can think of this one guy that I've always kind of regretted that I didn't let that see where that could go. So that was me. Now, not really anybody else, I don't think, but I
Right.
can think of one.
I can honestly say, I don't know if there is an ex. For those that are just joining us and watching, the question is, could your ex be your next? And even if I look back in my ex-husband or the past relationships I've had, could I really go back and say there's a guy that I was with in a relationship and I could literally go back to that relationship again? I'm gonna have to go with a no. I'm gonna have to literally go with a no. And they were great guys, but I'm thinking now, and I won't say no completely, because they were all great guys. They really were great guys. But I think as I've changed and as I aged, I think back to them and I'm thinking, would I actually do that?
But maybe they changed too.
Which means that we still wouldn't be right for each other. So if we both
Well, possibly, depending on what direction you changed, sure.
still would not be right for each other. But what are the challenges? Stephanie, you haven't answered. Would you
Yes.
go back? Is there an ex?
So I thought and really put some deep thought into it, because you meet different people along the way, even back to the very first little boy lived around the corner. You think back, and what would it have been like if and the relationships through high school and college, and there were some really, really good times, right? Some
Right.
Right?
really good times. And then, of course, there's marriage, and there's, people we date as adults. And, I had to go back and think. And I always try to pull on great philosophers to, for some of the wisdom. And the great philosopher Taylor Swift, in her words, said, "And we are never, ever, ever getting back together. No, no."
Wait, when she started with
Taylor Swift, a philosopher.
when she started with she likes to go back to the great philosophers, I was like, wow, I did not do enough homework.
You were expecting Socrates or Plato or Aristotle.
Right. What did they say?
I'm going with Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Okay.
We're never, ever, ever getting back together. No.
They said
we are never.
So I was telling my sister about this, and she was saying, your ex is like, putting French fries in the air fryer, trying to bring them back. She's like, you'll never get that crisp ever again.
I was gonna say it's like when you find that burger or that whatever that food is that was so good at the time, but you forgot and left it in your car, and now it's hot and stinking.
So that analogy works. The air fryer one doesn't work for me because, quite honestly, I think the air fryer really does reconstitute fries pretty nicely.
Well, maybe putting fries in the microwave then.
No, microwave. Okay, definitely.
So put them in the microwave.
When it's been sitting in your hot, steamy car, you're like, oh no.
But I'm saying, here's the thing though, on a sort of serious note, people are struggling with dating in all areas. We're going to avenues like online dating. We're going through all of that to try to find love. But maybe when you think about your past relationships, is it worth turning back? I mean, I'm not a big fan of going backwards, period.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of that. But for some people, is it worth you dipping back and saying, you know what, I'm in this? Like, even if you have an ex-husband or something, would you consider going back into that relationship? Because dating can be so hard.
Well, and I think that's exactly the good point that you make, that when you get out of these relationships that you thought were so bad, like, oh my gosh, I could do so much better being single, finding somebody else is probably better. And then you actually get out there, and with all the drama with online dating and just not knowing anything about the people you meet, that sometimes I think for some people, it starts to make some of those other relationships look like maybe that wasn't so bad. Maybe at least there's some familiarity. And I'm obviously not talking about, relationships that ended over some really, really horrible reasons or just bad reasons or things you couldn't deal with in your life. But, for some of those relationships that you kind of grow apart, or it's just like not working, but there could be a point for some people because of what it's like out there that is like, maybe that wasn't so bad.
Or your singleness, sometimes is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because we spend a great deal of time, and you all can chime in on this. We spend a great deal of time focused on relationships. Why we don't have one, trying to get one, trying to keep one, trying to manage one, trying to, till death do us part one.
Right.
We spend a lot of time
with
this
think
relationship thing.
We talked about this last week, making decisions out of fear, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to attach onto that desperation. And desperation gets this bad tag sometimes that you're just man hungry and you just out there running crazy. No, desperation means I've got these feelings inside of me that I really, really, really want something deep down,
Right.
I think making a decision to go back with someone out of fear of your circumstance or that feeling of desperation and loneliness, it's not going to end well, no matter how you do it. But I will say this, the one person who I have honestly put thought into would I do it is my ex-husband.
So you have thought about, maybe my ex-husband and I could come back together again. And
I don't think it's gotten to that point. Maybe we should, but like more along like, he has grown and changed. And some of the issues that we had at the time may not be as big of an issue now. But it hasn't progressed to the we should do that. It hasn't gotten there. No. But if I had to really think about somebody, if I was forced to, that would be the one person.
Right. I don't like, I know that it has, I think that when we think about relationships and we think about, if we're struggling with dating or we can't find the right person, I think more often than not, we think about what we had. But then you have to think about why we don't have it anymore.
Right.
Why we don't have it anymore.
Right. Why did that end?
Why did
and you do.
end? And so when we think about digging back in those old crates because, we're in some place of desperation or we just can't fathom our lives, as being single. Listen, I will say it. I love relationships. I do. But I love being single just as equally. I do. And we talked about this before. There is joy I find in both of those arenas. There is joy that I find. However, those moments where I think about, gosh, I'm gonna go back to a guy that we used to date. The first thing that comes to my mind is, why are we not together now?
Exactly.
Why are we not together now? Because people can change things, character, not so much. If you're an introvert, you're not all of a sudden going to become an extrovert.
Exactly.
There's some characteristics that will not change as a result, of just being human. But when we think about the struggles with dating, though, that will take us back to, and what would be the challenges of going back to an ex?
Well, I think the challenges would obviously be whatever were the reasons that you broke up the first time will tend to resurface depending on what they were. They will resurface.
Right.
Because just as you mentioned, people don't really change. Now, people can work on themselves. You can say, okay, this is something I want to work on, but it's always going to be work. Like you said, if you're an introvert, you're not all of a sudden going to become an extrovert, but you can say to yourself, okay, I know my partner, my mate, my wife, my husband is someone who's more of an extrovert. So let me make more of an effort to at least be a little more social. I'm never going to be an extrovert, but let me make more of an effort to be a little more social. So I think, but like we said, in general, people don't change. So whatever those issues were, those issues are going to resurface. It's going to be fun in the beginning and you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, you changed. This is so amazing. And then it'll be, oh wait, no, you didn't.
She said, oh my God, you changed. It's so amazing.
Right.
But and here's something I just thought of. What if, I know this is just impossible to believe. What if we're the reason and something was wrong with us?
Mm-hmm.
Now that
maybe we had an epiphany and said, I really got to get myself together. I got to stop being, whatever it is. I'll just say, I have to stop being so demanding. I got to let people be who they want to be. Maybe I was that part in the relationship that caused that friction and that wedge. So maybe I say, you know what? I've changed. I want to see if this can work now.
So here's another question, which is a hard question, is that so often people stay in relationships and they're not happy. You stay in it out of formality because it's routine and because it's habit. And, you just don't see yourself not in a relationship, because there are people in the world who do not see themselves not in a relationship. Mm-hmm. They can't even fathom the thought of not being in a relationship. And so you're right, Stephanie, going back to, it could be me. It could be you that really has the issue in those relationships. So going back to any of it is hard enough to do, but going back to an ex, if there's any hurt, if there's any pain, if there's any of that, all of that resurfaces the moment you come back into the fold. But because of desperation, we go into these relationships and we say, you know what, I'm going to stay here because this is what we're designed to do.
Right.
We're just designed to be in relationships. That's just kind of what it is. So a lot of people go back to their ex and they go back to the same drama or the
Yeah.
same,
Right.
stuff that happened before because we feel like we have to be in a relationship.
Well, and a lot of that's societal. I mean, you look at just about everything. Everything always pushes you towards being in a relationship. I mean, it takes, I don't know, a certain kind of person to be really, comfortable with themselves. Like you talked about, Kay, like you love being single, and loving being single doesn't mean you're not interested in a relationship. It just
Right.
means you're okay with you. You're okay with being you and being with you. And if a relationship comes along, that's great. So you're not saying you're
Absolutely.
anti-relationship. It's just
Right.
if it comes along, but I'm not desperate. I'm not seeking it out. Like it's not something you got to do. But for a lot of people, that's a lot more difficult because, from the time you graduate college and, start your job and people start asking you things. And the minute you get married, you have kids yet? I mean, everything about society pushes you towards relationships. Why do you think it's such a big business, the online dating and all these, match.com and whatever it else? Because it's big business, because that's what everybody is looking for. That's what everything is pushing you towards. So it's hard for some people to just say, no, I'm good. I'm content to be single.
Yeah. And
It's hard.
and the whole part of going backwards, how much growth does that show? How much
I don't think it
growth?
necessarily shows growth. I mean, I think it's very individual. And some
Yes.
people can say, yeah, we grew and changed a lot. Some people are like, I'm single, you're single. Why not?
Nothing else going on, so might as well come back. Right. So
Right. This is what I'm saying.
It runs the
And that's,
gamut.
and we think more a lot like that says, all right, so you single, I'm single. I bumped into you again at the reunion, and you're like, oh my God, look at you. I've been divorced 3 times. You've been divorced
right.
twice. Like, hey, maybe we
Okay,
get
so
together.
Right.
speaking of reunions, here's a bad scenario. And we are at the ages where this stuff happens. So you go to the reunion, and there's that person. We'll call him Dexter, right?
Okay.
Only because I saw something today, and the guy's name, I was getting something, and the guy I bought it from, his name was Dexter.
Listen, I'm cool
Okay.
with Dexter. I'm cool with
So, and I was trying to think of a name that none of us are connected to, right?
Right.
So there's Dexter. In high school, listen, Dexter was it. In high school, I liked Dexter. Dexter liked me, but we never really did, we never just really dated or anything. You say, now may be my time to date Dexter.
Like, hey, Dexter.
Well, listen, Dexter wasn't good for you in high school. Dexter ain't good for you now. But in your head, you become 17 again.
Absolutely.
And I got to date Dexter.
Absolutely.
But you just said you never really dated. So how do you know Dexter was no good for you in high school?
We all know Dexter wasn't no good.
I don't know that.
But the thing is that I do believe that going backwards, especially with an ex, it kind of takes away from your opportunity to explore everything new.
True.
Anything new. I think it takes that opportunity away from you to explore anything new. And I think this life is about exploring all things that are new, or as much of it as possible, because you don't get all of this world and all of this life to just do the same thing over and over and over and over again.
And expect a different result.
And
Right.
expect a different result. You don't get this beautiful life to do that. And so the world is full of all sorts of opportunities and options that going back may not be the healthiest choice. I don't care how much you believe it makes sense because you're in some place in your life, or you're feeling lonely and you want to go back to the dude from high school.
You think
Absolutely
your options
not.
are shrinking?
Right.
People do the same thing with regard to jobs. You go back to the old job because you know what? At that job, everybody knew me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew the job. I know all of the. It's a comfort that's there.
Absolutely, it
It's
is.
Exactly.
not necessarily good for you.
But it falls back to the place of fear. It really falls back to the
Mm-hmm.
place of fear because we are so fearful of what we don't know. We are so fearful of what we don't know. And I get it. A part of that is true. You get fearful of what you don't know. But when it comes to dating someone new, we have to trust the process, not be stupid, but at least trust the experience if, in a relationship you want to be. Yolanda. Hey, Yolanda. She says it depends on your age. If we dated when I was 30 and now I'm 50, it may work. But if dated 2 years ago, it's not a good thing to do. What do you think about that?
So I guess, she's basically saying, right, like, nobody you just broke up with, nothing's changed that quick. So I could get that line of thinking that somebody you just broke up with a year ago or 2 years ago, no, nothing's changed for either one of you, whether you were the problem or he was the problem's still there. Now, if you're talking 20, 30-year gap, and I guess depending on where you were in your growth as an adult at the time, I mean, maybe it could. I could see that working more than going back to the one you broke up with last week. Yeah, I could see that working. I don't know that either one will work because just like we talked about, whatever problems there were, whatever the reason what you broke up, those problems are probably going to resurface. But I could see of the two scenarios, that one might work better.
I think personality plays a huge part in any relationship. And for the most part,
Sure.
that doesn't really change. Again, we just said it. You're not, if you're an introvert, then you're not going to really become an extrovert. And if that was a struggle for you in your relationship, but I think also in dating, um, we don't talk about the real stuff. We talk about the surface stuff, especially
Right.
when you're in a dating process. We talk about the surface shit. And it's not the real, honest things that, especially as you get older, because we're afraid to go in on a date and say, you know what? Do you snore?
Right.
Do you snore? Because I really can't deal with you if you snore. Or, do you clip your nose hairs? I need to
Right.
know if you clip your nose hairs and the
Right.
hair is falling in the sink. I need to
I don't
know
like
that.
anything having to do with anybody's nose. If it's something
But I'm
coming in your
saying,
nose or out of your nose, I don't ever want to see it.
Okay.
Ever.
right. And
Ever.
so,
I don't
you
care
know,
what it is.
Delphine commented and she was like, I agree. There's so much in this world that we have so much to try that's new. But how honest are we either way? Most of the stuff that when we're dating, whether it's old or new, is just surface. And the older you get, the more things on your list that you don't want to tolerate, didn't tolerate, not going to tolerate. When you're younger, it's different. You tolerate all kinds of stuff. As you get
Right.
older, you're like, yeah, no. That matching linen short set you rocking right there, not doing that. We
Girl
don't
with the
do that.
cane, with the matching cane.
Right.
Right, with the top hat and shit.
Well
We
then,
not,
but that
we not
means
doing
as
that.
you get older,
We not,
you're probably more inclined to have those honest
And the
conversations as
Stacy
you get
Adams
older.
shoes
Shut up.
rolling in.
you got we not doing that. We
No,
not the zoot suit. We cannot do that. We
no.
not doing the zoot suit.
Ooh, and a
So
BB rope. He cool though.
but they believe. So that to me, because listen to me, there are men from our era who is still in our era.
Yeah, they're a little stuck. They're a little stuck.
They still there. And I'm saying
I'm keeping 1993 alive. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna get out there.
like, they show up
Get out
at
there
your
and break a
door.
hip.
Right. Especially if he's out there doing that dance you just did. I do not want to see that. I don't want to see that.
I can't do that. Like I can't. And for me, I'm not that cool where you could show up here looking like 1979 and we just be like, hey, we gonna kick it.
And you act
Or
right. And you
you
act
not
like you don't notice, right?
or you not tech savvy, you still on the rotary phone type vibe. We can't. There's nothing we can possibly do. And a lot of men are stuck in that era. They're stuck there with their clothing, with their style, with their conversation, with their like.
Because that's when they were at their peak.
Right.
And
they stayed there. They stayed
Right.
there.
Still in my peak. So I'm still going to act like I did when I was 27.
Because they rocked on the high school football team.
Right.
And they're going to tell you every time they see a game, I ran that play. You see that man he ran? I did that. What you got to do is take it and put it under here. And you.
We say, see, they didn't run it right. That's why it didn't work.
You ran Tallahawken High. You played, fullback. You were in 1984.
You got to tuck it under here.
That's why he didn't get nowhere. See, he wasn't balanced. His equilibrium.
Like it has to be some experience that has evolved, and that is the challenge, I think, especially with men, because I do not believe they have evolved as rapidly as women have, and I don't think that they want to. I think they're comfortable in that space of when either life was really, really good and they stayed there, or when they were really, really, all that and a bag of chips, and they stayed there in their mind and in their sensibility, like fashion and, stuff like that, conversation, all of that. And they have not evolved in that way. That would be the struggle with me with going back to an ex, especially coming from my generation or our generation, especially coming from our generation, because most of them are still stuck there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they will show up with a big brim hat and, in a zoot suit with no problem, and don't see any issue with that. But however, I do.
See, I've become more tolerant of a lot of things. I've become more tolerant. We can work around that. You want to wear your big brim hat, if that's the thing, okay. But let's wear a different shirt. We can do so
you let him wear the hat, but he gotta wear a different shirt. Okay.
Well, listen, I'm gonna go with trying to keep the shirt, and you got to get rid of the hat.
And get rid of the hat. Right.
The dog ate the hat. The dog has ate your hat. But I have become a believer in allowing people to be who they want to be. It doesn't have to match me. And you go out and I'll do me. Because here's the thing. I don't want you saying to me, oh, I don't like that on you. I don't like when you wear it.
I get it.
Do that.
I get it. But I also believe that there has to be some level of compatibility, because it may not strike you in the beginning, but at some point, as you go deeper into that relationship, those differences will become a problem.
Right.
They will become a problem. And so you can't have huge differences like that, because you have to know what you want, because I don't want to feel like I'm embarrassed if we went out together.
That's a difference.
You know what I mean? I don't want to feel like that. And so if I accept that, knowing that I'm not okay with it, then now we're out together and I'm like, damn, I hope nobody sees us.
Right. Because at that point you are embarrassed because you're not like, if you were okay with the style, then it's not even occurring to you that somebody else is looking. But yeah.
Right. So I don't want to feel like that, but I think that we have to have some compatibility, especially on the big things. In younger relationships, when we were younger, those things didn't matter. You kind of went into it and you were like, all right, whatever, I'm digging him, he digging me, he fine, she fine, it's great. But now you have, because the things that you thought about, I know for me, thought about younger, sex was a big deal. It was big if, it was a big deal if the sex was good or not. When you get older, you're like, it can't be as good. after you get a certain age, it just won't be as good. So those other things come to surface then. Those other things you start to think about. And I think you focus on more of those things than you do the things that when you were younger you focused on. You know, how fine he is, how tall he is, how great the sex is, how, you know. But as you get older, it's like, yeah, that's
We
not
know
it.
those things pass. We know looks fade.
Yes,
You
Exactly.
know,
that's not
it
it.
happens.
That's
His
not
hip
it.
starts to hurt. You know, my shoulder is tight. Like, you know, we know those
Right.
things happen. That's part of, like we talked about growth earlier. It's part of growing older gracefully. I understand things aren't going to be like when I was 25, and
Right.
the same with him. And that's
And
okay.
I'm okay with all that because we all have, as we get older, you know, your hip hurt, your shoulder hurt, or
Right.
whatever. But I'm gonna need your clothes to be in 2021. I'm gonna need your haircut. I'm gonna need your haircut to be in 2021. Listen to me. I'm gonna need your tech savviness to be in 2021. I'm at least need that because otherwise I don't know what we gonna do. What we gonna do?
Agreed.
Because we will totally be on two different pages all the time. So
Right. You sending text messages. He don't know how to read it. Yeah.
he don't know how to even work the phone. He don't even know how to get it out of the phone. Or better yet, don't know how to reply to it. So I'm like, yeah, no.
Or how to find the punctuation buttons. You can end a sentence, you know.
I can't. I'm not. But could your ex be your next? Is a huge question for a lot of single people. I'm not going to say just single women. Could your ex be your ex for men?
Right.
How much are we willing to open that door to a possible ex coming back into our lives saying, what's up? Yeah. I have to say, if I look down the list of all the exes I had, it's a hard no. It's a hard no.
It's a hard no for me.
I'm going to walk down the middle. I know I quoted, you know, philosopher Swift earlier.
Sure.
Oh God.
I am still leaning toward that, saying a hard no, but I think I would leave myself open to at least hear what he had to say before I gave the final yay or nay.
So now, hold on, that you said that. So we're gonna go a few more minutes. Now that you said that, so now you come out of this relationship, and because he done did some jacked up shit or whatever the case might be, are you gonna give him a moment?
It would depend on what it was. And
what would be the deal breaker? What would be the deal breaker? What would make
you know
say,
what would be the deal breaker, truthfully, for me? And I think we've talked about this before too. How do you apologize? If there was something he did that was the offense, how has he come back to apologize for that and make it right? Because I think we all make mistakes. And I think there is room for redemption and forgiveness. How has he come back to say, I'm sorry, and here is what I am going to do to make this right?
You would hear him out if he wanted to come back into the relationship.
Yeah, I'd listen. See, you know.
Right.
And do you really think you'd be able to forgive? Because, I mean, really forgiving somebody means forgiving them, putting it behind you, and not constantly bringing it up or making them pay for it. Do you really think you could forgive like that? Maybe depending on what it is?
Yeah, I was never in situations of my exes where there was issues of abuse. You know, there was another child that came into the relationship, that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking of the issues that we had. So I know for some people, I think it should be a definite no. If you had somebody who was a head clunker, you don't never need to be involved, you know, with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you not to go back to a head clunker.
Yeah.
No one. Don't go back to that. No. Because a head clunker sounds like it hurts.
It does. And I'm not even sure what that type of person does, but it does not sound like someone I want to be around.
Yeah. because you know a head clunker will make you a jailbird.
Mm,
Remember that.
okay.
It'll make a head clunker will make you a jailbird. Seriously, but I think again for those that are watching, ask yourself, you know, could your ex be your next? That's a strong possibility because more and more people are becoming single. People are reconnecting on social media or they're connecting on social media, and you're finding out that dude from high school that you did like, he's now married, divorced twice, two times, three times, and now he's available. He's hitting you up, he's hollering at you. You dated him back then, or you dated him 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you're like, you know what? Both are divorced now. Could I see myself with them? That is a legitimate question that single people need to ask themselves because that too can be an option for a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
who are looking to date. Robin says you can accept his apology and forgive him and not letting him in again. If they cheated, they will always be a cheater. Well, I'm not even gonna go down because that's a whole nother episode
Mm,
of the whole infidelity piece.
right.
But Val asked a very valid question that said, could you really forgive them without that cloud hovering? And I don't believe that when it comes to infidelity, because even if I wanted to, subconsciously, every time he didn't answer the phone, or he showed up late, or he didn't, my mind is going to
That's
go
where your
back
mind goes.
to,
Right.
I
oh
will
my
add
God,
this
he
caveat. I
cheated.
will add this caveat. I didn't believe it either. I know someone who did it. I know someone who did it. And she committed to it because of what she wanted. She wanted her family. He committed to it because he wanted his family. It was a lot of hard work. They are years down the line from that, and they made that thing work. I think they are the unusual couple, though. I will say that.
They
Right.
are
So
the
it's telling
exception.
you, yeah, it's not impossible.
I
There
think
are
it's very,
certainly
very
people
hard.
who,
They both committed
right.
to it and they both worked at it. No, no exceptions. Like they were definitely in it, and they were in it as a family to make it work.
Who cheated, him or her?
Him.
Yeah.
And there
And I
was
would have guessed
and there
I
was a
would have guessed
child.
that anyway.
There
And
was a
Yes.
it is
child.
because, and I think there's a difference when, it comes to infidelity, um, who cheats. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Who cheats? Because men don't find their way back as easily in infidelity, as women do.
Yep.
I think women can overcome it and commit back to the relationship. I don't think men have. I don't think they can.
No, I
It's
really
just
don't.
their nature, because that's harder for them to wrap their mind around. Women can forgive that and move on. Because I would be saying, listen, you didn't pick up the phone. What? Were you with her? You was with her? Listen, he would be so sick of me. I would be like, oh, you was with your little ish tonight, right? Is that what's happening here? And he could have been in church. I don't know. But
Right.
I'm
He's like,
just
what
saying.
her? What her? There hasn't been a her in a long time. Oh, you know who she is.
Oh, it's a new one. It
I'd
ain't
have
the one I heard from before. Poor man, he was
been
at the
like,
grocery store getting some meat.
listen, I'd have been like, I text you and 30 seconds went by and you didn't text me back. What is up? What you doing? You with her? Everything, everything would be like, you with her? Is that what you doing? I think, it's just some kind like your mind. And if you saying that it doesn't come to the forefront of your mind, I don't believe that.
It
You
does.
may not act on it, you may not
Right.
say it, but you are thinking it.
Of course.
You just are thinking it because that's really about a trust issue more than it is anything. But since there are no exes that we would go back to, I can't think of one. I would go back to one. I have to say, I thought about that. I would go back to one, but that's
Are we gonna name names?
no,
No.
we will not.
No.
No, we will not. We will name no names. However, if you have um, a great person that you feel is worthy for you traveling back in time, I say go for it. at least it is comfortable and you know it. And all I can say is we'll pray for you. We'll pray for you.
We'll pray for you.
So that's what I have to say about that. Okay. Once again, thank you all of you who are watching, all of you who are commenting. And let me just read these last comments. Renee says, a man can't get past knowing another man has been with his woman. And I truly believe that is true.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. So it's harder for men to accept infidelity than it is for women. And so I think, if there's an ex in your past and you broke up because of infidelity, because of him or her cheating, whatever the case, or him cheating, but if you were cheating as a woman, it is way more difficult.
You don't have to worry about going back because he's not taking you.
Yeah, because he's not taking you.
No.
He not ever coming back to that. So, and isn't that weird though? For a whole nother conversation, but that's crazy. But I think women are more nurturing and more forgiving. And women want the foundation of a relationship way more. Men, love being in relationships and marriages, those who are in it. But I think women love the idea and the actual act of being in a relationship. And that's a part of life because we feel that's where we're supposed to be. But again, if you have an ex you want to go back to, we're going to pray for you. Because if your ex could be your next, you need prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
good luck.
Right. Okay. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The GYST, because when it comes to life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, sometimes you just need a moment to get your shit together, and so do we. Thank you. See you next time, Wednesday, 8 p.m., right back here on The GYST.
Bye.